Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor, and today I'm going to be in conversation with India's Finance Secretary, Mr. T.V. Somanathan. He can talk to us about the budget, about economic policy, and we're sure to learn a lot about the government's thinking from him. Thank you so much, Mr. Somanathan, for joining us. So now you've given a lot of interviews already, a lot of topics have already been discussed, but there is an issue that is of great interest to the youth of the nation, which is the futures and options market. And so now in the budget, there was a tax nudge for the market. Was this an attempt to dampen this over enthusiasm that we are seeing?
Yes, but
Okay.
I'm not sure that this alone will reduce volumes considerably. But yes, it is a signal and it is an attempt to collect some tax revenue from an activity which we think is perhaps not a merit activity in the volumes that it's happening now.
Right. And so, how real and serious is the concern within the government? Because a lot of people now have talked about it.
It is a concern because India's futures and options volumes as a ratio of volumes on the cash market are unusually high by global standards and are unusually high even by Indian standards. So, A, India is an outlier, and B, in India it's rising.
Right.
So, it is a concern. What is the concern? The concern is that we've had rising markets for quite some time. When the market keeps rising over a period of time, it is easy to be lulled into a false sense of confidence.
Right.
The risk in futures and options is that with very small stakes, one can trade very large nominal amounts. You can make 100% gain in a day. You can also lose 100% in a day. That's not
Absolutely.
possible. That's not usual in the cash market.
Right.
I mean, even a share may fall calamitously by 20%. You would have lost 20%.
Yes.
But here you may be wiped out with a 5% drop in a stock. You may get 100% loss because of a 5% loss
Right.
of the stock because
Yes.
of the leverage that is involved in the futures and options.
Right.
So the risks are much higher than in the cash market. And this is not perhaps, at least we worry that investors are often getting in without being adequately aware of these risks, and that they may later find that they've put too much of their hard earned savings into something which they thought was a good speculative investment, but turned out to be ruinous. And at that stage, it becomes too late. I mean, if you regret it. So, on the other hand, should we ban it? Certainly not. I think derivatives play a certain role in the market.
Right.
They provide risk management and risk hedging opportunities for those who need to manage and hedge risks. So they do have a place. But is the tail becoming too big for the dog? Is the worry that we have.
Right.
So there should be a dog, and dogs should have tails. But should the tail be as long as Hanuman's tail in Lanka, or should it be a normal dog's tail? Is the issue that we are trying to address. But to be honest with you, I am not convinced that tax changes alone will bring trading volumes down to more reasonable levels. But I think it will help. It's a nudge. And at any rate, I would like to collect some tax on it if somebody is doing something which we don't think is of merit.
Right.
They
Absolutely.
can at least contribute then to the
Exchequer.
larger welfare of the country.
Right. And now, keeping to government policy, can we safely assume that the public sector enterprises policy is now a thing of the past? There was no mention of disinvestment or privatization in the budget speech, and your targets from it have also been lowered.
I wouldn't agree with your characterization of the policy. What I would say is there's a change in emphasis. And the emphasis now is, as my colleague, Mr. Tuhin Pandey, eloquently describes it, it is a shift to a value creation and value optimization strategy. The approach is to look at, I mean, think of us as investors. Let's take an average investor or a large investor. A large investor may have a controlling stake in some companies, minority stake in some companies, maybe wanting to sell off some of his holdings completely, may sell some of them partly. and may retain some of them for dividends and for long-term appreciation.
Right.
The way we are now looking at our portfolio of public sector enterprises is something like that. That there are things that we will hold on to forever, things that we will continue to hold a majority stake in for now, but we might dilute up to 51%. Things that we will divest, and then things that we'll hold on for dividends and divest at an opportune time.
Okay.
So it's a more opportunistic or pragmatic strategy rather than a statement that these companies will be divested at this time. And so it's a change of emphasis is what I would say.
Okay, so that entire the strategic, non-strategic bifurcation.
No, that is still there. The strategic
Okay.
ones will forever remain in our portfolio.
Right.
So those are the ones we are not going to dispose of. Again, what have we said? In the strategic sectors, there will be at least one PSU present.
Minimum presence.
Minimum
yes.
presence. The others could be divested or would be divested, but no timing has been specified in that policy.
Right.
So that leaves room for. But yes, there is a change of emphasis. I would agree.
Okay. And now,
And it is no longer, divestment as part of that strategy is no longer center stage.
I understand. And now, why does the government feel that the private sector will start hiring more because it's getting incentives? It's not as if money was the roadblock.
Look, again, it is a basic. Okay, let me start with economic theory and empirical evidence suggests that incentives do matter at the margin. They do
Okay.
influence behavior at the margin. And let me give you anecdotal evidence. Every time we meet CII or FICCI or somebody, they say, you know what, if you give us accelerated depreciation, we'll invest more.
Right.
If you give us tax deduction for R&D, we'll do more R&D. Does it mean they are doing R&D only for the tax deduction? Obviously not.
Yeah.
But if they claim that they'll do more R&D for a tax deduction and do more capital investment for a capital allowance or investment allowance or accelerated depreciation, then surely by implication, whatever you give them fiscal incentives on, they will do more of. They will not necessarily do it for the incentive.
Right.
So I'm giving you that as an anecdote. Let me come to something more specific. Every industry, I'm not expecting any industry to come and say, there is this beautiful scheme A and B and C and therefore we are going to hire. No. They will hire if they have a need to hire. But at the margin, every industry has some choices to make. One choice is, do I hire a first timer who's unemployed and has no previous experience on his CV? Or do I hire TCA, Sharad Raghavan, who has such a wonderful CV, has been in government, he's been in the private sector, he's been in the media. I'll obviously choose TCA, Sharad Raghavan. But we would like to nudge them towards considering these other candidates who don't have previous experience. And first timers do face an entry barrier. It's true of every, try getting a job with no experience. We have all
Absolutely.
been at it
Yes.
at some time. So the attempt is to create a fiscal incentive which lowers the cost of hiring a first timer who is less productive, who has a longer learning curve, and
I see.
therefore it's an incentive. Now, will a company pick up or not is up to the company, but it does make a difference. If I have to spend some time training the person, I know he's unproductive for some time, a subsidy helps. It says, okay, I can take this person, he may not be productive for the first month or two, but the government is covering 1 month of his salary.
Right.
So it helps. And therefore, it is international empirical evidence suggests that incentives do help. They do make a difference. That when you incentivize something, it usually expands. Now, the elasticity of that expansion for the incentive is something I can't measure.
Right.
But it is there. And the second thing is that even in high-tech industries, even in highly mechanized industries, at the margin there are choices to be made between automation and labor.
Right.
So, for example, the same kind of high-tech industry which operates in India and in Japan, you'll find in Japan everything is robotic.
Yes.
Right from packaging and putting it in the truck, everything is robotic. In India, some of that is handled by labor. The
Right.
industry may be the same, the product may be the same, the product may be highly high-tech. There are marginal choices to be made of further automation or use of labor, further use of programmers or use of AI.
Right.
There, in different industries, there are points at which there is a choice. The core technology may be, so footwear or textiles may be prima facie labor intensive.
Right.
Even there are choices to be made between more mechanization, less mechanization. In capital, even in semiconductors, most of it is capital, most of it is technology.
Right.
But there will be some parts where there is a choice between, do I engage packers to put it into the cardboard box, or do I have a robot that puts it
robot,
into the
yeah.
cardboard box? Now, those choices can be influenced by fiscal incentives.
And your nudge is obviously
Our
towards
nudge
labor.
is towards labor. So we are saying our fiscal incentives are now not the old investment allowance. We had a very handsome investment allowance in the tax code many years ago.
Right.
We are a capital scarce country. So we are saying we don't give you investment allowances. We give you employment linked incentives. Employ more people, take more subsidies. But it's only when they want to do it. I fully agree with you. Nobody will employ for the sake of this subsidy. But we believe that it can alter the employment intensity of growth. So the
I
growth will
understand.
happen because the sector has to grow. But do I do something with 100 programmers and a lot of AI, or do I do it with 200 programmers and less AI?
I
We
understand.
feel we can influence that choice with fiscal incentives.
Okay. And now, again, just trying to understand the government's thinking on various things. This doesn't have to do with the budget exactly, but what drove the decision to stop releasing the GST data in a kind of press release form?
I am not party to that. You'll have to ask Mr. Sanjay Malhotra.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with
The thinking
the.
behind
But
it.
we don't typically release other data on a monthly basis with a press release.
Oh,
Our monthly accounts
the
keep
income
coming out,
tax
the
data.
CGA. It's not. Have you seen a press release on income tax data?
They
Every
do
month?
send it, yes.
I see. I'm not aware. We don't do it in the expenditure department. Our
Ah,
CGA
right.
accounts come routinely. They
Yes.
get published on the website, and we don't do anything more than that.
Right. And now on the fiscal deficit, are we moving past the 3% FRBM target? Can we expect a, a legislative change?
I'm not sure about the legislative change, but we are no longer committing to a 3% target.
Okay.
I mean, that's mentioned in the speech.
Right.
That we are moving towards an approach where the fiscal deficit is a dynamic target, but set in a manner that the debt to GDP ratio of the center keeps falling.
Okay.
Now, why is it dynamic and why is it not fixed? Because if you have an economy, so see, the amount of fiscal deficit which would produce a decline in debt varies based on whether your nominal growth is 10% or 12%, whether your
Right.
prevailing interest rates are 6% or 8%. All of these influence the deficit that you can sustainably run. An
Yes.
economy with higher growth can run a higher deficit and still reduce its debt. An economy with higher interest rates will have to run a lower deficit than an economy with a lower interest rate.
Right.
So these are factors which move in opposite directions. At a given time, suppose India's economy is growing rapidly, then we may be able to afford a higher fiscal deficit and still reduce the debt. If we're growing more slowly, we may need to target a lower fiscal deficit to keep our debt reducing. But we are not picking a figure and saying it'll be 3% or it'll be 4%, because that means that the target is the deficit itself. For us now, the target is getting the debt down gradually so that we have maximum flexibility for growth. So there is a trade-off between debt consolidation and making enough resources available for growth.
No, absolutely. Because you have to otherwise service the debt.
That's
Right. And now on the private sector, uh, what do you feel is still holding them back from investing?
I can't speak for the private sector. So
Okay.
it would be wrong of me to try and.
But you would have
imagine
spoken to
why-
them.
They never tell us the truth. They are too polite with us. Typically, they would tell us what they want from us rather than what they're actually doing.
I see.
When we meet them, they always want tax cuts, they want subsidies, they want. I mean, I'm not criticizing. People should ask us for what they want. Nothing wrong.
No, of course.
I'm not making. I'm not being negative. All I'm saying is, I wouldn't know why they're not investing, and they're all telling us that they're going to invest.
Okay.
So they keep telling us they are investing, and that they're about to invest, and I think they are actually. I have not reviewed the data recently. I think private investment is picking up, maybe not as much as we would want it to, but I think it will pick up. But beyond that, I have no comparative advantage in knowing why they're not.
Because the survey raised some concern saying that
Yes.
they are investing, but they're investing in areas that are not generally driving economic growth.
The survey is giving you the facts, but your question was why.
Was
I
why.
don't know.
Yes. Okay.
At least I have heard them. They say no, we are we are doing it and we're going to do it, and we are all very happy and done with it.
Right. And now, speaking about investments and also the survey, it batted for us looking to maybe increase investments from China rather than increase our imports from there. So, I mean, is the government looking to
See,
review?
the economic survey is produced independently by the economic division. It
Right.
reflects the professional analytical thoughts of the division and the chief economic advisor.
Mhm.
It raises a valid issue. It's a tough issue because it's a balance between economic growth and national security.
Right.
And such calls are always very difficult. So there is no decision to do, it's not as if what is mentioned in the economic survey is the way policy is going to involve. No, it's an idea. It's an idea which the respective departments will have to consider, and some departments may be in favor, some may not be. It has to be looked at from all the angles. So no decision has been taken.
But it is being considered?
And look, anything that is said in the economic survey or which is being advocated by particular will always be considered. Government is a very deliberative system, as we would know. I mean, things
Right.
take time, ideas are considered. Consideration neither means that it will be done, nor does it mean it will not be done.
It will be thought about though. Like
It will be
that's
thought about.
yes.
Yes, it will of course be thought about.
Right.
Economic survey is a serious document and it is taken seriously. So it will be of course thought about. There will be different perspectives because we do face a difficult neighbor and the national security issues are real.
Right.
The economic trade-offs are also real. These are not easy decisions. These are sort of wicked problems where there are no easy solutions. And we'll have to see what is in the overall interest, and there are no quantitative models that can give you an answer here.
Absolutely.
These are subjective judgments, and they are difficult judgments. Will it be considered seriously? Definitely.
Okay.
But does it mean policy is changing or has changed? No.
I understand. And now my final question, I know that you have a lot more interviews also slotted. Can we see some GST rate rationalization happening in the near future?
The attempt will be made. I think the centre is keen, and I'm sure the centre will propose rationalization in the GST Council. But the GST Council is a truly federal body where the
Right.
centre has veto rights but cannot drive an outcome. So it is something that the council will have to take a view on. And I must say that, look, rationalization is not always as popular in the implementation as it is in the suggestion.
Right.
Because when people suggest rationalization, they are thinking, oh, 28 will become 12 or 18.
But 5
They're
will
forgetting
also
that 5
go.
might become 12 and 12 might become 18.
Right.
And so rationalization is nice in one direction and not nice in the other direction.
Absolutely.
Often when people say rationalization, they mean reduction.
Yes.
But we need revenue too, and states need it even more than we do. So whatever happens will be a revenue neutral rationalization is my sort of broad
But
expectation.
at least fewer rates, is that something there's at least some agreement
yes,
on?
yes, yeah. Well, fewer rates is very desirable, but fewer rates also means that some things will go up
Yes.
and
Of
some
course.
things will go down.
Right.
And that is a choice that the council will make carefully.
I understand. But on that note, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.